Okay, welcome to How to Present and Close Like a Rock Star in Network Marketing. And I gotta admit, this is a training that I never imagined in a million years that I would be giving when I got involved in network marketing, because I came into network marketing really afraid of speaking in public. It was a massive fear of mine. In fact, in the 8th grade, I had to give a book report in front of about 30 kids. And I remember like it was yesterday being in front of the class and just feeling frozen and was shaking so bad I couldn't read the words on the paper. I remember having to take a deep breath, letting it out, and just trying to hold the paper steady in my hand. I read through it as fast as I could. I went and sat down. And I remember saying to myself, I never want to do that again. And so, in fact, in high school, I actually took a 0 on a project because it was something that I would have to present in front of the room. So, when I got into network marketing, I was like, I can figure out this invitation thing. I'll get good at that. And, one-on-ones, two-on-ones, whatever. But when it comes to speaking in public, I was out. I was not going to be a presenter. And I got forced into it. I probably heard my story earlier. My mentor was typically the one that did the presentations. And I had actually most of the room was in my organization. Out of about 400 people, it was probably 2/3 or 3/4 was my team. And so he pushed me. He made me present. And, I was not good. I screwed it up a bunch. But, a bunch of people enrolled. And here's what I've really come to realize is you being an effective presenter is not about you being super polished. People are like, they get so upset because they say and ah, and maybe they forget their place, they stutter, they stammer. All of that makes you real. And I'm not saying don't be a great presenter. I'm not saying to, hold yourself back, but what moves people is your authenticity. What moves people is your realness. And a lot of people focus so much on being perfect that they lose that element. They lose a lot of the connection because they're just, again, trying to be too perfect. In fact, I remember not too long ago going to a seminar, and there was this guy who had all these accolades. He was a member of the National Speakers Association and all this kind of stuff. And he got up on stage, and there were no uhs, no ahs, nothing like that. But he was so perfectly polished. It was just so almost scripted that there was just no connection. That's not what moves people. If you want to know how to present and how to close, again, don't worry about being perfect. You've got to be real. And so the other thing is this. Now, you can be successful in network marketing without presenting. I firmly believe that. There are a lot of people who have, done their whole career and they don't speak in public. They're for whatever reason. But if you want to earn the big money, if you want to be $1 million a year earner, in my opinion, you got to be out presenting, because it allows you to create momentum. It allows you to create results with teams, especially that are not in your local market, because you're going to be enrolling people, or you'll enroll someone who enrolls someone who enrolls someone in another city. And so when you have the ability to get on stage and touch, move, and inspire people and call people to action, then it's going to make you money. It builds confidence in the people in your organization. And so they'll fight to have you come in and speak. And so I'll give you an example of one of the ways that I've built my organization. Now, I have really spoken a lot over the years. It's been about 15 years that I have regularly been speaking. And so I've done, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not, thousands of talks. And so I'll give, new groups, I'll give them an incentive. Like if I'm in Dallas and they're in maybe Austin, Texas, a couple hours away, then I'll say, listen, put in 6 people, put in 10 people, and I'll come down. I'll spend a day or two, and we'll do meetings and presentations and trainings. And, I'm going to get everyone excited. And will take what you've built to the next level. Now, if they're in a market I have to fly to, it might be 20 people or 30 people. If it's overseas, it might be 50 people. And that's how I've built a huge international organization as well, is because if I have someone, who enrolls, maybe they're in Poland, and, they're really serious, I'll say, listen, you put in 40, 50 people in your organization, and I'll fly there. I'll fly across the ocean and come see you. I'll spend a few days. We'll do meetings, we'll do trainings, and we'll turn that 50 into 500. And, what happens is when you're able to go there and you're able to really just kind of light people on fire, you're able to close a bunch of people, it allows you to train other people on how to be a good presenter as well. They catch some of your golden nuggets, they catch your one-liners, and you're able to tell them what really works as far as moving people to action. And so I'm going to give you a ton of stuff here. Now, what you're getting is, in my opinion, it's worth tens of thousands of dollars. You're getting 15 years of my experience on specifically what causes people to buy at presentations, what causes people to take action. In fact, I spent $10,000 for a one-day training on understanding a lot of the hypnotic selling elements that cause people to take action immediately. And so I really feel like I've gotten, a lot of mastery in this. And so as you go through this, be taking notes, take notes and then memorize a lot of the philosophies and a lot of the statements that I'm giving you here, because the psychology really, really works. And in fact, most 6 and even 7-figure earners in network marketing don't understand a lot of the psychology behind why, people take action. So a lot of what I'm giving you here, realize 6 and 7-figure earners in network marketing, they don't even understand this stuff. And so if you really internalize this, it is going to let you into a world of human psychology that most people just don't know existed. So this is a lot of hypnotic selling stuff. And let's just kind of start out with, before you get on stage. Before you get on stage, I'm going to encourage you, you need to have a high level of energy. You need to pump yourself up. I used to see my mentor jump up and down before he got on stage. And, I'm big on modeling. If I see that's something that other people do, I need to do it as well. In fact, I know this is not good for me, but a lot of times I'll drink a Red Bull right before getting on stage. I'll have an energy drink right before getting on stage. So, and I just noticed that what happens is the caffeine, whatever, it just causes me to perform a little bit better. Now, I don't use it as a crutch. I don't have to have it, but if it's a really big talk or something like that, I'll usually do that. So high energy before you get on stage. And one of the things that you want to have is, it's really preparing yourself mentally. I'll tell you, I generally am doing affirmations before I get on stage. I'll tell you one of the ones, I've got a goal of being one of the best in the world in network marketing. And so, before I'm getting on stage, I'm just saying, you're the best there's ever been and the best there ever will be. You're the best there's ever been and the best there ever will be. What that does is I'm programming myself to have confidence so that when I get on stage, I'll have the confidence to perform well. And I'll tell you, confidence is one of the biggest key elements. In fact, I was with my mentor one time, and he was just so good. It was like people hang on every word he says. And I remember saying, man, you're such an amazing speaker. It's just amazing how high of a percentage of people enroll when you present, when you speak. And he said, you know why, Matt, I'm a good closer? And I said, why? And he says, because I'm confident that I can close. And I said, yeah, I'd be confident too if I could speak like you. And he said, no, you don't get it. I'm not a good closer. I'm not confident because I'm a good closer. I'm a good closer because I'm confident. See, you need to have the confidence that you will be closing people. That is one of the biggest keys, one of the biggest secrets that I can give you, is you just having the confidence that you're going to be able to move people to action. And when you have that confidence, it just shows up. See, a lot of why people take action is because they see your strength. and they're attracted to it. In fact, I remember at a presentation one time, afterwards, someone said, well, what do you like best? And they said, Matt. That was why they enrolled, was because I was an effective speaker. It was like not the product, not the opportunity. It was because of the speaker. And so you have the ability to really move people if you have that level of confidence. Now, another thing that I do at trainings and so forth is I just say a prayer and I ask God to, give me the right words. I say, don't make it about me, make it about the crowd. Just allow me to open up my heart and say whatever needs to be said in order to cause people to, make the right decisions and do the right things. And so to be able to make an impact. And so that's a couple things that I do before I get on stage. You want to have an inner smile. When you get on stage, throughout your presentation, have this inner smile. It's like I just imagine sometimes before I get on stage, my body filling up with positive energy. Filling up with confidence, filling up with everything that I need to be effective. I just imagine it. Sometimes I'll just stand, both feet on the ground, close my eyes, and I imagine this positive energy coming up from the earth, just filling me up. Now, I'm just giving you my strategies. That may sound weird to you, but if you feel like that may help you a little bit, you can use that for sure. Now, one of the keys, I believe, is throughout your when you come on stage, when you smile, if you're smiling when you present yourself to the audience, see what a smile does is a smile builds rapport. A smile makes you more likable. And people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. And when you smile, they just like you more. So when I get on stage, you'll always see me with a very big smile. I am happy to see the audience, and I want them to feel that, happiness that I've got. And so, smile. The other thing is what I do is I smile throughout the entire presentation. As I'm talking, I get comments all the time on it's like, man, you just trained for 8 hours all day long and you smiled all day. How do you keep a smile all day long? And it's one of the reasons why I've been an effective speaker now is because I know that keeps the rapport with the crowd when I'm smiling throughout the day. And so that's something for you to really focus on when you're on stage. Now, I didn't used to do that because I was nervous. I was in my head, and there is going to be this voice that, is like questioning every word that you say. And so as you're talking, you're going, oh, did that come across right? What did they think about that? I can't believe I just said, and you're it's that critical voice. And I don't know how to get rid of that critical voice other than you just do it a lot. Realize if you just keep speaking, your comfort level of being on stage in front of people is going to go away. And speaking in public, getting good at public speaking is just like anything. If you do it enough, you can't help but get good at it. If you ride a bike 100 times, you're going to get good at riding a bike. Anything that you do, if you do it enough, you are going to get good at it. And so just realize that voice will go away, and it actually will start to change. You can be in front of a crowd of several thousand people, and you're speaking to the crowd. And as you're speaking to the crowd, your voice, instead of it being judgmental, the voice is saying, what am I setting up next? How are they responding? Things like that. And so you're able to have like two conversations on stage. One is your conversation with the audience, and then the other is your conversation with, what you're going to say next and so forth. So it's really interesting, the internal dynamics that happen. Now, when you get on stage, it's important that you always have a proper introduction. See, the audience needs to have a reason to listen to you. And so whoever's introducing you, you always want to make sure that they know some key bullet points, some things to talk about. If you have children, one of the things that is really good to mention is, you're a family man, you're a family woman, you're a mother of 3, you're a mother of 2, that makes you more real. You're a great father, you're a great mother. Little things like that. So you've got your accolades in business, But don't think you have to have all of these crazy accolades in business to have the proper introduction. A lot of times when you give the introduction, it's great to have the person tell a story about you, maybe how they met you. And what that does is the audience kind of gets to know you a little bit before you come on stage, so you're not a total stranger. When you do come on stage, you always do the handoff. So the person should stay on the stage until you get on the stage, give you a handshake or preferably a hug. A hug is, you hug someone that you really care about. And so when the audience sees that the person introducing you, you guys have a connection there, they're more likely to have a connection with you as well. And so these are subtle little things. And it's not like if you don't transfer with a hug or a handshake, it's going to, be really bad. But it's all of the little things that add up to a really high closing ratio. And if you screw up a lot of the little things, that ends up leading to a lower closing ratio. So I'm giving you a lot of little things throughout this training here. And just realize that all of those little things add up to a big result, to a big positive result. Okay? Now, when you take the stage, again, you're smiling. One of the things that I like to do is, number one is you can tell your story. I think you have to tell your story. One thing that I typically do is I start with humor. Very important to start with humor. Because what happens is the people in the crowd have a guard up. And what my mentor told me when I first started speaking, he said, Matt, I want you to be entertaining first and informative second. It's more important to be entertaining than informative if you want to have a high closing ratio, because here's what happens is people have this guard. People are naturally kind of skeptical. They've been to other events before and someone's tried to sell them and, things like that. And so they come in skeptical. They have the guard. Well, what happens is when you entertain the guard by being entertaining, then, that guard kind of gets distracted. You're able to actually really touch people, and you're really able to get into their heart if you're able to distract the guard. And so that's why it's important to start with humor. I'll tell you one of the things that I never really felt like I was a very funny person. I'm not someone who naturally tells a lot of jokes. In fact, I've always had a hard time remembering jokes in the past. So I didn't have much confidence that I could be funny. Here's how I became funny is I just borrowed material from other people. In fact, I'm going to give you one that you can use. This is one that I started using a lot, and I just noticed it worked most of the time. Now, when you have a joke, I typically will never start with a joke. Did you hear about the, 3 people who came into a bar? Don't tell a joke like that. When this is one that you can actually use is, I used to do this. I'd get on stage and I'd say, man, I appreciate that introduction. Thank you so much. I never imagined I would be someone speaking in front of people. In fact, I'm actually always a little nervous anytime I speak in front of people. How many of you know the number one fear in the world? Have you read this before? Number one fear in the world is the fear of public speaking. And you know what's interesting? You know what number 2 is? Number 2 is death. So kind of crazy. The person at the funeral giving the eulogy would actually rather be in the casket. But how many of you have heard of what number 3 is? Number 3 is death by public speaking. Hopefully that won't happen today. And, people kind of chuckle at that. Now, it's not going to get people rolling in the aisles, but it's just something to kind of lighten the mood. And so start with humor. Now, I sometimes will just kind of start with my story, and my story, I've worked in some funny things about my story. And, in fact, one of the things that if I'm getting a really loud introduction, not a loud introduction, but when people are cheering, they're standing up and they're like, woo, first thing I'll say when I get on stage is I say, obviously, you guys haven't heard me speak before. And then I smile. And, it's just kind of bringing myself down because I got this big glowing introduction and I'm saying, man, you guys haven't heard me speak before. Other things that I'll say to add a little bit of humor when I tell my story about, I went to college after the Marine Corps, had this level of confidence that was through the roof. So I decided, even though I was the kid who finished in high school, I finished in the half of the class that made the top half possible. I decided I was going to be pre-med. So first semester in college, I failed chemistry, got a D in biology, realized I wasn't cut out for medicine. Transferred over to the economics school. I had to take Calculus 101, the most basic class. Failed it miserably, like not even close. Took the exact same class the next semester, same textbook, same lesson plan, same everything, and I still didn't pass. So I became, I had basically two choices. It was either go be an entrepreneur or an underwear model. And people laugh at that, they laugh because it's funny. Like, where does underwear model come from? And then I ask them, I give a funny look like I'm almost mad. And I say, why are you laughing? So little things like that you can just add some humor. Find as many cases as you can to add humor. Now, don't feel like you've got to be a comedian. You don't have to be a comedian. Now, I learned from my mentor, and he's just really goofy on stage and funny and cracking up. And so that's kind of how I learned. Now, there's a lot of people who are amazing closers. They may be better than me, and they're not funny. They don't tell a lot of jokes. They may just tell something funny in the beginning, and then they leave it at that. So again, don't feel like you have to be a comedian. Now, one of the things that I realized is if you want to be funny, laugh. If you want your audience to laugh, you laugh. I noticed Les Brown, whenever he tells a joke or says something funny, he'll laugh like crazy. And the fact that he's laughing like crazy makes people laugh even more. And so I had another mentor of mine. He said, if you want your audience to cry, you got to cry. So if you're telling like a really heartfelt story, don't be shy about letting some of your emotion out. When you're emotional, that allows other people to be emotional. It's, a great book. I've probably mentioned to you guys, Daniel Goleman wrote Primal Leadership. And, it's the transfer of emotion. It's the transfer of energy. And the way that you transfer emotion and energy is by you having emotion and energy and you opening yourself up. And so when you can open up yourself on stage, people are affected by that. So please don't worry about being cool on stage. You being an effective speaker, you being an effective closer is not about you being cool. It's not about you being polished. It's about you being authentic, okay? Now, one of the things that I do, and this is contrary to what almost everyone does in network marketing. In fact, one of the things I've seen I've just seen it happen so much. People in my organization have done it. And it's a big, big mistake, is the person who will get up on stage and they'll say, we just want to let you know, we're not here to sell you anything. We're just here to share with you a concept. It's so cheesy. You're obviously there to sell them. And in their mind, and you may be thinking that's sharing, but in their mind, you're thinking, well, they're trying to get money from me. That's selling. And so you come across, when you say things like that, as inauthentic. You come across as a liar. And people buy from those they know, like, and trust. And so when you break trust in the very beginning, they are not going to buy. Now, is it going to cause no one to enroll? No, you could make a little mistake like that. And still get people to enroll. But again, it's one of those little things. And so if you got, 20 guests in the room, there may be 2 or 3 that are not going to enroll because you said something like that, because you broke trust. And even if they consciously are not thinking, man, that guy's a liar or that lady's a liar, subconsciously, it's a reason why they may not really believe what you're telling them. Is it may not even be a conscious thing. It may be a subconscious thing that happens. And so here's what I do. This is contrary, is, I'll a lot of times I'll say, appreciate you guys coming out. I know a lot of you are guests and, you're brand new. How many of you are taking a look at what we're doing for the first time? Raise your hand. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming out. And, it's time to be really just blatantly honest. How many of you think it's kind of weird? How many of you think it's weird? And I smile when I say it, and I'm raising my hand. See, when I raise my hand, I'm giving them permission to raise their hand. I'm encouraging them to raise their hand. Again, if you want people to laugh, you laugh. If you want people to raise their hand, you raise your hand, okay? And it is weird. See, a lot of people get invited to a network marketing meeting, and the person who invited them didn't tell them why they're there. It's like the curiosity approach. Hey, I need you to come look at something. And it's just weird. They don't know why they're there exactly. And so I'm going to point out the pink elephant in the room. And by doing that, I'm building rapport with them. And so I'll say, listen, I know it's a little bit weird. How many of you probably have no idea why you're here? How many of you have no idea why you're here? You know, and people, and the guests, they'll look at me and they'll nod. They'll nod like, yeah, this is weird. I don't know why I'm here. It's uncomfortable. They are uncomfortable. So what I want to do is I want to set them at ease. And so I'll say, listen, in case you were wondering, man, is this some kind of cult meeting? Come on, did at least one of you thought it was a cult, right? Well, listen, I want to set the record straight. Number one, this is not a cult. Okay, we will do a chicken sacrifice at the end, but that's not cultish. And, you know, people will laugh at that. It's an icebreaker. Okay, so pointing out the obvious. And when you can point out the obvious, what that does is it builds rapport. It builds trust when you're pointing things out that they have going on in their mind that most speakers are going to try and avoid, right? The fact that you're not trying to avoid it, number one, it gives you authority, it gives you confidence, and it makes you real. Now, the other thing that I'll do is I'll say, and in fact, I usually will do it right after this, is I'll say, and I know some of you are probably a little bit skeptical because you're like, man, what are they trying to sell me? So let's be honest. How many of you think I'm going to try and sell you something? Raise your hand. Come on. And they will. They'll raise their hand. And it's like, yep. And I'll say, well, listen, I'm going to set the record straight right now. If you're thinking, man, he's here to sell me something, I want you to know, absolutely. That is exactly why I'm here. That's exactly why you're here. It's so I can sell you. And here's what I'm going to sell you on. How many of you, by show of hands, would be open to having more fun in life than you're having right now? And I'm raising my hand really high. Okay, so let me back up. What I just did is I'm pointing out the obvious. Now, they're skeptical, and in their mind, they're thinking, man, they're going to try and sell me something. I know they are. And what most speakers do is, you know, they warm up the crowd, they tell stories. That's all great, but, you know, it doesn't get rid of the skepticism that people have in their mind. And by pointing out the obvious and just being honest, yes, I am here to sell you. And listen, I'm my number one goal is not to have you buy, it's to have fun. I promise you I'm going to have fun whether you do or not, so I'd encourage you have fun with me, okay? I'm going to go through some information, and listen, there's going to be about half or more of the people who see it who say, man, that sounds awesome, I'm in, I love it. And there's going to be, you know, maybe 40, 50% that, you know, it's just not for you. And if it's not for you, let me tell you, there's no closers that are going to come out. We're going to part as friends. I just want you to have fun. Cool. Fair enough? Great. And so, you know, what I did there is, this is a subtle thing. It's hypnotic selling, but it's speaking your closing ratio into existence. You know, so a lot of times I'll say, you know, listen, here's the thing. I know how the numbers work out. Anytime I come and, you know, I do this presentation, there's going to be about 60% of you are going to say, you know what, I want it. There's going to be about 40% of you. It doesn't matter what I say. It's just not going to be for you. Either way is totally fine. And so it plants a seed in their mind that most people do this. And when they're looking at, wow, could I do this? Could I be successful in this opportunity? Well, if I invite people to this meeting and, you know, more than half the people, if most of the people are going to do it, that would probably mean I can be successful with it. So if you notice that it's a little hypnotic selling, it's a subtle thing, but adding that to your presentation, it's going to increase your closing ratio ever so slightly. So that might increase your closing ratio 2 or 3%. 3 or 4%. You know, it's small, but again, it's all the little things that add up to a really big closing ratio. Okay, so I've pointed out the pink elephant in the room. I've let them know most of the people do it. If you don't want to do it, that's totally cool. This is another subtle hypnotic thing. Is I say, you know, when I go through the information, you know, you're either going to get it, it's going to make total sense, or not. Either way. Now, people typically want to come across as being smart. People like to think of themselves as smart. And so what I usually do is I say, you're going to understand it. You're going to get it. It's going to make perfect sense. Or not. Either way is totally cool. So what it's doing, it's almost a challenge for them to want to really understand how the information worked. And here's how I came to that. I had a guy that came up to me. It was actually someone in my group before a presentation. He got there early and said, hey, I've got a guest coming, and I just want you to know they are super skeptical. He's asked me a million questions that I can't answer. And, really analytical guy. He's a business major at college. And I said, man, don't worry. Don't worry. Just introduce him to me. So anyway, the young guy comes up. He's a really sharp guy. He's, business major. And man, he is loaded down. He's got a notepad. He's got his questions listed. And he comes up and he starts, asking me. He starts grilling me, and I'm not one that you can grill very easily. And so I forget his name right now, Craig. I said, hey, Craig, listen, I'm going to go through a full presentation. I'll talk for about an hour, and I'm pretty sure most of the questions that you have, I'm going to answer. And, you seem like a really sharp guy. I think it's all going to make sense to you. I mean, pretty much every sharp business person that I ever show this to, man, they get it. They understand it. So just be patient. At the end of the presentation, anything that's not adding up in your mind, just come ask me. I look forward to talking to you after. Thanks for coming. And I shook his hand and I went on and talked to the next person. And so here, I planted the seed. It was almost a challenge. And so what happened at the end of the presentation, he comes up to me and he's like, you were right. It makes total sense. I'm excited. And I probably didn't even answer the questions that he had. It was just that I set it up properly. Okay. So again, that's a little hypnotic thing that you can do at the beginning of your presentation. Now, when you get on stage, one of the things that will make you more entertaining, and again, it's more important to be entertaining than informative, it's moving around. If you stay behind a podium, that is boring. People, they lose interest if you're not moving around. And so if you'll notice, the best speakers in the world, they have full utilization of the stage. They go from, one side to the other, to the very front of it. They go sometimes to the back. And what I do, and what a lot of the greatest speakers do, if it's appropriate, if you're in front of 10,000 people in an auditorium, it's not appropriate to really get off stage. But if you're in a smaller group, several hundred, up to as many as 1,000 or so, get off stage. Get off stage and move around. And a lot of times I'll walk down the aisle and I'll walk about 3/4 down towards the back of the room. And so by doing that, you make a connection with the people in the back of the room and in the middle of the room, whereas if you just stay on stage the whole time, you're not making that connection. Now, sometimes people worry, well, will you lose the people in the front because you're behind them? No, they actually move around and they're looking back. And the simple fact that they're having to move around and look back, that actually makes it, more entertaining for them. It keeps them more energized because they're having to move their body. So motion creates emotion. Move around, create that connection. I'll give you another, hypnotic selling strategy is when you tell your story, if you've got something that's really heartfelt, get off the stage to tell your story. So get off the stage, and if there's someone sitting on the front row, there should always be someone sitting on the front row. What you can do is you can stand next to that person and just put your hand on their shoulder as you're telling the story. And what happens is when you have your hand on their shoulder, and I typically will only do it with a male. If it's a female, people may see that as me maybe, inappropriately touching or something like that. Just, it's not as appropriate. So I'll find a male to do that with. If you're a female, ladies, you can touch another female, just so you don't want to send any mixed messages. But I put my hand on the gentleman's shoulder, and then I go through part of my story. And I'll just have my hand on there for a minute or two. And what happens is I'm making a connection. I'm touching that person. I'm making a connection. And subconsciously, when I make a connection with the person on the front row there, it makes a connection with the entire crowd. Now, again, it's not like you do that and everyone's going to enroll because of that. It's another little subtle thing that's going to just make you, have more rapport with the crowd. Okay. Now, Another point that is very important is you must have control of the audience. You need 100% participation. Okay, and this is something that you need to command. You command 100% participation. Now, you don't do it by being a jerk. You don't be arrogant about it, and I'll just explain kind of how I do it. And so when I start off, my presentation, I'll typically ask 3 questions in a row to get them to raise their hand. And so I'll say, how many of you, by a quick show of hands, would love to have more fun than you're having in life right now? Raise your hand. Now, again, I'm raising my hand all the way up. In fact, I may even get on my tiptoes a little bit, because by me raising my hand, that's telling the crowd to raise their hand. Now, I may get some people who don't raise their hand. And I'll say, come on, I flew all the way in from Dallas to be here. I drove all the way from across town to be here. How many of you want to have more fun in life than you're having right now? Raise your hand. And, there we go. And then I'll say, how many of you are open to taking more vacations than you're taking right now? By a show of hands, how many of you would love to travel more? Raise your hand. And so hopefully I've gotten most of the people, if not everyone. And then the third question I usually ask is, and how many of you are open to the idea of earning more income than you're earning right now? Raise your hands. And again, I'm raising my hand all the way up. Now, what'll happen is usually there's going to be someone who doesn't raise their hand. And I may directly point them out, or I may just kind of point in their general direction. And I'll say, oh, come on. Surely you don't think money is the root of all evil, do you? And I kind of laugh, I'm being funny about it. But what it's saying to the crowd is, you better pay attention. And so what I say actually is and I just want everyone to know, beware, I do pick on those who don't participate. Okay. Another thing that I'll say, hopefully that's, now the crowd, the audience, they're used to following my orders. They're used to raising their hand when I have them to raise their hand. At some point, I may ask a couple more questions that I'm asking them to raise their hand, and someone may not. And I'll say, how many of you want to do this? How many of you want to do this? How many of you are not going to raise your hand no matter what I say? And I point directly at the person not raising their hand. And I kind of smile. And so what it does, and typically the person will make eye contact and they'll raise their hand. It's like, oh, okay, you caught me. So again, it's these little subtle things where people don't want to be picked on. They don't want to be singled out. And so you're forcing them to participate. Another thing that you can do is call out people's names. When you call out people's names, so John, Sally, and you say their name, it engages them. And what happens is, you don't have to obviously say everyone's name, but when you say a few people's names, and I'm sure you've probably been to talks where you notice speakers do this, here's why they do it, is because it engages all the other people as well. Not only does it engage the people's names who you're calling out, the people who you didn't call out, they're like, man, I better pay attention. So, if he calls out my name, I know what he's talking about. And sometimes you may ask a question. It's like there's 4 stages of growth in a company like ours. John, how many stages? 4 stages. And so what happens is I'm just asking John a question to make sure he's paying attention. And people are thinking, man, I better pay attention because he asks on me. I don't want to have the wrong answer. And so again, another powerful way that you can control the crowd. Now, here's the whole point. If you cannot get the audience to raise their hand, you can't get them to buy. If you can't get the audience to say yes, you can't get them to buy. If you can't move the crowd, you can't get them to buy. And so that's why it's important to do this. And you want to get the audience used to following your commands. When you get the audience used to following your commands, at the end of the presentation, when you're doing the call to action to have them enroll, they're used to doing what you've told them to do for the last hour, and so they're more likely to enroll just because it's that consistency and commitment. You've been getting them to do, follow your orders the whole time. Now, another thing that you want to do a lot is ask a ton of yes questions and demand a response. And so, it doesn't matter what the question is. I mean, it's just anything. The key is this. The human mind, if you don't engage it about every 7 minutes, then they start daydreaming. They lose focus. They're thinking about what they're going to have for dinner. They're thinking about what they're going to do this weekend. You've lost them. And so that's why you want to keep asking questions. And a lot of times I'll ask a question and then I'll answer the question with a yes. And then if I'm not getting much participation, I'll ask the question again and say, yes, just basically saying, come on, participate. And now, I'm not one of the obnoxious speakers who are like, what I hate personally is, the speaker who gets on stage and they say, how's everyone doing? I said, how's everyone doing? Everyone has seen that. It's so corny. It's so cheesy. It's like you're really pushing to get command. Now, that is one of the ways that you can get control of the audience. I just prefer to do it in other ways. There's a lot of effective speakers who still do that. I just think it's been so overused that I think a lot of people, it almost makes them more skeptical when the speaker gets up and does that because they see it as, really kind of cheesy. So asking a lot of yes questions, then it gets them to be in a yes state so that at the end of the presentation, they're used to saying yes. They're more likely to say yes to enroll. Now, one of the other things that is really, really important, and this is something that you will really notice if you listen to the best speakers in the world, they vary their pitch. They vary their speed. If you listen to a Les Brown is going to be, he's going to come down when he tells a story. When he makes an effective point, his volume is going to raise. He starts talking faster. It gets more exciting. And then he may come down again. Okay. And so what happens is, that difference going up and down, changing your tempo, it makes you more entertaining. It makes you more interesting to listen to. You're not boring. Now, some speakers will get on stage and they want to be really impactful. And so, they get on stage and on a scale of 1 to 10, their energy is like a 9 the entire way through. And listen, you can be just as boring if your energy level is a 9 because nothing is really more impactful than anything else. So it needs to be like a symphony. There's got to be peaks and valleys, okay? You definitely need to be impactful, but you also need to bring it down a little bit. If you're on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're a 9 the whole time, again, nothing really is going to stand out, okay? So vary your pitch and your speed, move around on stage. One of the things that I do a lot is, I'll try and make full use of the stage. In some cases, if I'm training and I'm talking about how when I first got started in network marketing, I'd go make calls and people would tell me no, and it hurt so bad. I'd just go home and I'd lay down and I'd just be in the fetal position. And I'll actually lay down on stage in the fetal position. Okay, and that alone makes me really interesting. The fact that I'm laying there in the fetal position. When I talk about living out of my car, if there's steps leading up to the stage, I'll sit down on the steps as if I'm sitting in my car trying to go to sleep when I'm telling that story. So I'm using the stage, and that makes me more entertaining. Now, I'll give you another key. This is a big one, is have something in your talk that makes you part of the car ride conversation home. Something that really stands out. I tell a story about when I was living out of my car. I showered in the rain one night, and I actually reenact it. I'm standing in the middle of this church parking lot with nothing on me except a bar of soap in my hands. And if you've ever showered in the rain, there's no concentration of water like a shower head. And then I'll just pause and I'll say, and I apologize for the visual, by the way. Now, why do I do that? I do that to make the talk a little more memorable. I do it to be entertaining. And again, it's just one of those things that makes it more interesting, more entertaining for people. And so try and think about how you can work something like that in. In fact, at one of the last trainings, when I laid down on stage in the fetal position, I had people talking about that. Man, can you believe he laid down on stage? That was hilarious. No other speaker laid down on stage. I was the only one who did it. And guess who? It made me more memorable. Okay. Another thing that you always want to do at the beginning of your presentation, start with why. You want to tell your story. As it relates to getting involved in your company, where were you before you got started? What was going on in your life? What were some of your dreams, your goals? What were some of your aspirations that were not coming true for yourself? And by you sharing your story and you being authentic, that gives people permission for them to be authentic. Okay? So start with why. Always tell your story. If you don't tell your story, you're not going to be as relatable. You're not going to make as many sales. Other things that you should do throughout your presentation in order to engage their mind, to have them say things. One of the things that I'll say at the beginning, I'll say things like, for instance, we'll show 4 stages of growth that network marketing companies go through. How many stages? 4. And so I'm getting everyone to say 4. Fear is temporary, regret is forever. Regret is what? Forever. So I'm just getting them to repeat some of the things that I'm saying. Other things you can do is you can tell people, write this down. Write this down. That causes them to re-engage. Turn to the person next to you and say, I like that. Is this making sense? Yes. Are you getting it? Yes. Okay. And this is a quick hypnotic selling element is I ask those 2 questions simultaneously. I'm going to go through some information. And if I notice maybe, it's been a couple minutes since I've gotten them to say yes or say something or something like that, and I'm covering a point, I'll say, is this making sense? Are you getting it? And I'm pointing to my presentation as it relates to my product. So if I've got my product that I'm explaining, I'm saying, is this making sense? Are you getting it? And I'm pointing directly to it. And if I don't get participation, I'm going to say, are you getting it? And I'm getting them to say yes. Now, hypnotically, what I've just done is I've pointed to my product and I've said, are you getting it? Now, what they heard was, is this making sense? Are you getting it? Meaning it's one and the same, but are you getting it basically means, are you buying it? And they've just said yes. So they've actually, before we've even asked them to enroll, they've already said they're getting the product. So again, a little hypnotic element that can lead to a higher enrollment ratio. Okay. So we've talked about, at least every 7 minutes, you want to engage people walking around, walking down the aisles. You want to tell a lot of stories. The stories are something that people remember. If you just give people information is not very interesting. But when you tell a story, people they want to listen to stories. If someone says, hey, you want me to tell you a story? You naturally want to say yes to that. People want to hear stories. And so rather than just, explaining a concept, tell a story about it. Tell your story. Talk about your family, with a lot of the reasons why they should do this. Rather than tell them why they should do this, you tell a story about maybe someone else, who is, if I'm explaining, for instance, a lot of people think that, because they've never done network marketing or never done anything in business or sales, that they can't be successful with this. And if you just say none of that matters, you can be successful with this, that doesn't mean a lot. I mean, it will help if you say that, but what would be more impactful is if you say, a lot of people feel like if they've never done any network marketing or they've never done anything in business or sales before, that they'd have a hard time with this. And I think of my friend Wendy. Wendy was a retail worker. She had never done anything in business, grew up in the hood, and but she saw this, got excited. She plugged into our system. She plugged into our training. And within about a 3-year time frame, she got to a 6-figure income. She's traveling around the world now with no sales experience, nothing in business. And, when she got her award for earning 6 figures, here's what she said. She said, I never imagined something like this was available to someone like me. And so you can see now how telling that story about Wendy is going to be a lot more relatable. It's going to be more impactful than me just telling them, you can do this. Okay. So also subconsciously, stories create trust. It engages the mind. If you think about who are storytellers, grandpa used to tell stories, grandma used to tell stories, and you'd always want to listen to it. So again, it's a subconscious thing. When you tell stories, you're going to be more trusted. Another thing that you can do throughout your presentation is excite their imagination, okay? One thing that I do in a lot of cases is I'll talk about, a certain level of income in our company. If you could just imagine earning $2,000 a month on a part-time basis. Now, obviously, you're not rich with an extra $2,000 a month coming in part-time, but let me ask you a question. What would that feel like? What would it feel like just having an extra $2,000 a month coming in? What would you do with it? Give me some examples, and then you solicit answers from the audience. What would you do? John, what would you do with an extra $2,000 a month? Sarah, what would you do with an extra $2,000 a month? And you get people to start saying what they would do. See, I'm engaging the crowd. I'm getting them to tell me. And so people start saying things like, I'd get a nicer house. I'd pay off my debt. I'd buy a new car. I'd take more vacations. I'd send my kids to better schools. I'd donate more money. And I get them to start telling me. And what I want to do is I want to get them spending the money in their mind. I want to put them in a place where it's like they already have it coming in. And then, I'll say things like, if time and money were no object, what would you do with your life? Okay, imagine what it would feel like to be able to take a week vacation every single month. Would that be cool? And then I might show the higher levels in our compensation plan. And I say, and this is not for everyone, but, there are, quite a few people in our company and they've hit that highest level. And that highest level, it's an average of $47,000 a month in income. What would you do with an extra $47,000 a month? Would that give you some choices? What would that feel like? To never have to read the menu from right to left again. And that's something where people kind of chuckle because that's what most people do. They read the menu from right to left. They look at the price before they look at the item. Okay, excite their imagination. The other thing that you do is you always assume the sale. So one way that you assume the sale is you speak to them as if they are enrolling. So when you say, what you wouldn't say is, if you sign up tonight, if you join our team tonight. What you would say is, when you enroll tonight, we'll have your website set up immediately. You can immediately log in. You can start going through our training videos, and you could actually, and you just can't carry on with it. So again, that's a little subtle thing, but it's not if, it's when you get started. When you're a member, here's what it's going to be like. You as a member are going to experience this. And so again, I'm putting them in the place where they're already in business. Now, one thing you definitely want to cover throughout the presentation is you want to answer the question, can I do it? We talked about that before. Number one question they have is, can I do it? And so if I'm doing a presentation and I've invited people out, people have invited guests out, and I'll say something like this. I'll say, at this point, pretty much everyone at this point loves the products. Everyone's excited about earning more income. But if you're like me, when I saw this for the first time, it didn't matter that the company was so great. It didn't matter that the products were so great. All that was important to me. But what I really wanted to know is probably the same thing that you want to know. Could you do this? Could you actually be successful with this? And so, I don't want to sugarcoat anything. I'm not here to hype you up, but I'm just going to ask you a question, and I'm going to have you answer it in your mind. Rather than me tell you you can do it, I'm going to have you tell yourself if you can do it or not. So I'm going to ask you a simple question. What I want you to do is just look at the person who invited you here tonight. Just take a look at them real quick. Now, here's the question, and I want you to answer me honestly. Can you do what they're doing right now? Can you do that? And obviously the answer is yes, because they're not doing anything. I'm doing all the explaining. I'm presenting everything. And guess what? I'll present for you as well. Guess what? Every single week, there's going to be someone right here to present for you. So if you can invite someone to just come out and take a look, you can be successful with this. So again, I've answered that question. One of the things I'll do is I'll show an image of our website, and there's 3 videos on the website. Step 1, 2, and 3. 3 videos. Now, by a quick show of hands, how many of you have friends that can count to 3? Okay, if you raised your hand, guess what? You can be successful with it. And so just a couple examples of what you can do to really have them believe that they can do it. You want to, in fact, I even point out that when you get started with us, I want you to promise me that you will not go out and be a cheesy salesperson. And if you go out and you call people up and you try and explain it all over the phone and you try and sell people, I'm just telling you, you're not going to have a whole lot of success. Why? Because here's the reality. 95% of the people in the world don't like to sell. I mean, how many of you, by show of hands, how many of you love to sell things? Okay, and you get a handful of people raise their hand. It's usually around 5% will raise their hand. And I'd say the rest of you, you'd probably rather eat worms than have to sell something. Well, guess what? In our business, if you're working with me, I'm going to tell you absolutely, if you want to rock this, do not go try and explain it all. You sit down with people, you show them a video, you have the video do the explanation, you bring them to an event like this, and you have someone else other than you do the explaining, do the selling for you, okay? Now, another point, a lot of companies now have if you refer 3 or 4 people, you get your product for free. And what I've noticed is a lot of people devalue their product. So they explain, the product, and they say, and I know a lot of you don't like being stuck with monthly fees. Now, it is good to overcome objections, but you never want to overcome the objection by devaluing your product. So you never say something in their mind like, I know you don't want to pay a monthly fee. What you do is you build value in your product so that even if it was impossible to get this for free, you would want to do it anyway. That's the way that you want to present it. And then, but after you've built value in your product, then you can explain. Now, we do have a program called Free with 3. By simply referring other 3 people that purchase our product, you can actually have your product paid for. So again, don't ever make excuses for the price of your product. Build more value. Now, one of the other things that you can do, and this is a law of the price contrast, is when you present your product, something that the best salespeople in the world do is they'll build the value up to be really high. It's like the value of this product, if you were to, it does this for you, it does this for you, it does this for you, it does this for you. I mean, that should easily cost $2,000 for all of that. To have a business that works for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that does all your accounting, that does all your tracking, that gives you training tools, that gives you this, that's an easy $1,000 value. But guess what? When you get started tonight, it's not $1,000. It's $114. Whatever the price is, you just break it down. So build value in the price, and then you contrast that with a lower amount. Okay. Handling objections before they come up. This is an important thing because if you're presenting in front of a group, most people are not going to be good at overcoming objections. And because they're not going to be good at overcoming objections, you want to do it for them. And so, don't have the money, don't have the time, and have to think about it. Those are the most 3 common objections. I like to answer all 3 of those in my presentation. And so when I go through, the total price, if you were to do everything, and I'll usually explain, you can be just a customer, you can be just a representative, or you can do both. I'll explain that. And then I'll say, if you wanted to do both, it would cost this much. Now, you can figure out what's going to be the most effective way for you to do this. But if you're thinking, man, that sounds awesome, but I don't have whatever the amount is, maybe it's $500, but I don't have $500. I don't mean to be overly bold, and I really don't want to offend anyone, but at whatever age you are in your life, if you don't have $500, something's not working right. And I'll just be real with you. Where you are right now in your life is based on the decisions or lack of decisions that you made 2 and 3 years ago. And where you're going to be 2 and 3 years from now is based on the decisions or lack of decisions that you make today. So I'm going to encourage you to make a decision today that 2 years from now, you're still not stuck saying, I don't have $500. Because I know each and every person in this room, if I were to say, listen, I will sell you a brand new Ferrari for $500, but you have to come up with the money by midnight, not one of you would not come up with $500. Every single one of you would come up with $500 because you'd have this car worth $100,000. And so I'll tell you this business, in my opinion, worth way more than $100,000. There is no limit to the amount of income that you can earn. This can set you financially free. This can change your life dramatically, but you have to be willing to do what it takes to come up with the 500. Okay? So there's an example of how to overcome the money objection. How to overcome the time objection. I like to overcome that when I'm talking about the leveraging aspect, when I'm talking about, getting paid based on the organization of customers that happen throughout your sales organization. That's when I'll usually cover the time objection. I know some of you are thinking, man, I don't have a lot of time to do this. If you're thinking I don't have the time, you miss the point altogether. Because this is about buying back your time. It's about putting in a small amount of time, a few hours a week, consistently over time, and getting to the point where you're not getting paid just based on your efforts. You're getting paid based on the efforts of hundreds or even thousands of people in your organization. So, if you're saying I don't have the time, you really need to do something about it so you don't have to be stuck saying I don't have the time for the rest of your working career. The next one, I've got to think about it. The way I usually cover I've got to think about it is, at the end, I'll say something like this. You're either an A, a B, or a C. If you're an A, you're saying, shut up so I can sign up. Listen, I'm about to shut up. If you're a B, you have some questions. We'll answer your questions tonight, and we'll just help you make an informed and educated decision to get started. If you're a C, it means it's not for you. Now, there are sometimes people who you are a C, but you don't want to hurt your friends' feelings who invited you here. And so you tell them, I've got to think about it. Okay. Well, we know I've got to think about it is really just a polite way of saying no. Okay. I've given you so much information tonight. I have definitely given you all the information you need in order to make a decision on whether this is for you or not. And so if this is not for you, just let us know. We part as friends. We want you to know what we're up to. We know some of the people that you're close to that you have in your phone. We know they're going to see the presentation. Some of them are probably going to enroll. See, I'm planting a seed in their mind that if they don't do it, their friends will. And so just let us know. If anyone, we've trained everyone at the end. You say A, B, or C. If you say, I've got to think about it, we've trained everyone to actually slap you. And then I laugh. So obviously, no one's going to slap you. It's just something funny, but it's going to dissuade them from saying, I've got to think about it. Now, another thing that can be really powerful, I like to do this on the price slide towards the end, is, forget for a minute making $100,000 a year. Forget making $1 million a year. Yes, there's an opportunity to do that. But let me just ask you this, and just answer me honestly. If all this did was allow you to earn an extra $300 a month on a part-time basis in addition to what you're earning now, would it be worth it? If all this did was allow you to take an extra one vacation a year, giving you memories you're going to have the rest of your life, would it be worth it? If all this did was allow you to earn $1 more in residual income than what your bills are, and you had freedom in your life, you didn't have to fight traffic to and from work every day, you could spend all the time you want with the people that you love and care about the most, wouldn't it be worth it? Okay? And so what I'm doing is I'm just breaking it down to the ridiculous. It's like, man, worst case scenario is pretty darn good, okay? And you can insert whatever would be appropriate for your product. If all this did was give you more energy, every single day than what you had now, making you more productive, would it be worth it? If all this did was had you lose 10 pounds and you felt more energetic and excited about life, would it be worth it? Okay? So if all statements can be really powerful. Create 3 if all statements. I always do 3. I do $300 a month, an extra vacation a year, giving you memories you'll have a lifetime, and $1 more in residual income than what your bills are. And again, that gets people imagining, well, you know what? He's right. If all it did was $300 a month, man, it'd be worth it. Okay? Now, another thing that you can do throughout your presentation is pepper in quotes. The greatest speakers in the world pepper in quotes throughout their presentation. Okay? Some little things that I say, towards the end, typically, don't tiptoe through life quietly so you can arrive at your grave safely. You want to know the main reason to do this? Life is too short. Listen, we have a limited time on the planet and a huge world to go out and see. How many of you want to go see the world? How many of you want to really live life? How many of you feel like God put you on this planet to do more and to be more than what you're doing and what you're being right now? Little things that you say, most people, I set this up. I say, now, how many of you, I'm going to tell you something interesting. How many of you know what the average life expectancy is in America? This is the reality. The average American dies at age 35. And people will have a little shocked look on their face. And I say, unfortunately, they're just not buried until about age 85. And, most people are walking around dead. The only difference between a rut and a grave is the depth of the hole. This is about you getting out of that rut. It's about doing something big in life. Okay. So, throw in those quotes. Mark Twain said 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than the things that you did do. Sometimes in life, what you have to do is jump and grow your wings on the way down. I'll reference Les Brown. One of my mentors, Les Brown, said sometimes in life you got to jump and grow your wings on the way down. So there's all kinds of little one-liners that you can throw into your presentation. And those quotes, they just sink in with people. One of the quotes I say a lot when I'm referring to residual income is I'll say, here's what's true. If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. And I emphasize die, right, to make it a little bit more interesting to listen to. And so it just hits home. It's like, yeah, you know what? I do need to create some residual income. So, some other things that I use sometimes to close out a presentation is I'll just set this up with the crowd. I'll say, listen, and I'm going to finish out tonight making you one promise. And I promise you this is true. There is not one single person in this room who's going to make it out of life alive. Every one of us are going to go. Every one of us. We've got a limited time. And, when you're gone and you've got your tombstone, there's the year you're born and the year you died. And what's in between those 2 years is a dash. So here's what I want you to think about as the question for tonight. And I'm going to encourage you to make this the question of your life is, what is your dash going to look like? You're going to finish your life and look back on your dash and go, man, that was awesome. Are you going to look back and go, could have been a lot better. I wish I would have tried more things. I wish I would have ventured out. I wish I would have been courageous. But you know what? At the end of your life, it's too late. So make a decision now that your dash is going to be as meaningful as you possibly can. If you feel like joining our crazy team here would make that dash more meaningful, I'm going to encourage you to come join us. Step through any fears that you may have and just realize, hop in. The water feels good. I promise you it will be one of the best decisions that you ever made. Thanks for coming out. Talk to the person who invited you here. Let them know if you're ready to get started, if you have questions, or if it's not for you. Appreciate you coming out. Good night. Okay? So, I'll typically finish out with something like that. Now, here is, a little bit of post-meeting. A couple different ways that you can do this. Number one is you can say, we finished the first part of the presentation. The next part of the evening is where you circle up and you talk to your friend and the people who invited you out. We'll get your questions answered and just help you make a decision. That way, people are not just getting up and leaving immediately. It's like, we're not over yet. It's time to collect a decision. And so you train everyone to circle up, answer the questions, teach your organization the closing skills that, I'm going to go through in next week's modules. Very, very important. I'm going to give you such amazing material that will help you and your entire organization enroll people and close them and, help them make a decision to get started. Okay. Now, when I finish out a meeting, what I'm looking for is people who maybe had really high energy, people who I think, man, that person, they got to be in. I want to find some people who are, very quickly going to say yes. Okay. And so me as the speaker, I'm going to typically do this. If you got someone else who's a host or the host for the night, the MC, have them, train them on how to do this. And so within, 30 seconds or so, I'm looking for someone who's in and someone who's saying yes. And I'm going to find them, and then I'm going to welcome them to the team in front of everyone with the microphone. And so let's say, so-and-so, whoever's sitting on the front row, if, I see that they're in, I'm going to say, you're joining the team? Awesome. Hey, everyone, welcome John to the team. And you have everyone, clap and cheer for them. What happens? Again, this is a subtle thing, but people make decisions based on other people making decisions. And so if they see that other people are saying yes, they're more likely to say yes. See, people are used to just being led, right? They're used to doing what other people do. And if they see other people doing it, again, they're more likely to do it. And so I want to look for 2 or 3 as fast as possible, and that will create a domino effect. So a lot of other people say, you know what, awesome, let's go for it. And, so we get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people saying yes. Congratulations, welcome Jane to the team. Congratulations, welcome Sarah to the team. Congratulations, welcome Mary Beth to the team. Congratulations, welcome John to the team. And, the guests, the people who haven't made the decision, they're like, man, a lot of people are doing this. And then, one thing that you can do in the closing process, and me as a speaker, what I want to do is I want to go out into the audience and I want to help people make a decision. I want to answer questions. I want to help facilitate the closing process. And so, one thing as I'm answering questions, I can say, you know what? Obviously it really works. I mean, a lot of people, you can tell a lot of people do this. So if you can invite people out and just have people take a look at this, as you can see, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to say yes to this. And so again, that helps them make a buying decision. So again, that's kind of a subtle thing. One of the things that's good to do even before the presentation that is also going to help with the enrollment process, if you're the speaker, get there a little bit early, mingle with the crowd, introduce yourself to some people. Ideally, your representatives, they're going to be introducing people to you. Build a little bit of rapport, build a little bit of friendship. That way, when you get on stage, you're not a total stranger. They already know something about you. Again, that's going to increase your closing ratios. And you also train your team to introduce their prospect to several other people. That way they kind of get warmed up. They're not a total stranger. They made a couple friends, ideally someone that they can kind of relate to a little bit. And, all of that combined, I mean, I've given you so much information that leads to a high closing ratio. So you may need to go through this a few times, take some notes on it, figure out how you can implement this into your product, your opportunity. And I look forward to hearing your story about being an amazing closer soon.